Welcome to Next Level Play Therapy, a weekly podcast dedicated to supporting the next generation of child and adolescent therapists to provide exceptional play therapy services. We'll explore all things play therapy to elevate your work with children and adolescents using the therapeutic powers of play. I'll discuss practical tips and ideas so you can provide a transformative experience for your young clients and make a real difference in their lives. So get ready to take your play therapy skills to the next level and make a lasting impact in the lives of children, adolescents, and families. Hey there, welcome to this week's episode of Next Level Play Therapy, where we talk about all things play therapy. And today we're going to explore it using an integrative approach to play therapy. Because one of the questions I think that comes up all the time is there a best way to address trauma with your child and adolescent clients using play therapy? And I think this is, over the years, over the decades, I've actually been in the mental health field for 35 years now, almost 35, I think, at this point. And it's gone through several different name changes. Way back in the day, we called it an eclectic approach. Now we call it an integrative approach. It still is more of that. Either name you use really has more to do with a blending of models. And what does that mean for play therapy? And what does that look like? And what does it not look like? Because here's what I think people get a little confused sometimes about: what does it mean to be using an integrative model? And what does it not mean? Because when you use it in a way that is not helpful, then you end up doing what I call the throwing spaghetti against the wall method, which usually ends up in you feeling like you're not helping your clients, you feeling like nothing's working. Then you start wondering, am I even doing a good job? Is this even working? I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just going to you feel exhausted because you're always trying to come up with new activities, because it just seems like if the last one didn't work, then I'm going to use this one, and this one will definitely work. And then you end up feeling exhausted, depleted, and a little burned out. So that's why I thought it would be helpful to talk about what exactly is an integrative play therapy model, and what does that mean when you're using that model with children and teens who've experienced trauma. So if you are listening or watching live, I would love to know who's here. For those of you who are watching live, post your name in the comments, where you're from, what population are you working with, and if you're watching on the replay, I would still love to have you join the conversation, post your comments. I respond to all the comments, even after the replay. I love having conversations and connecting with play therapists around the world. I just think that's the coolest thing, that we can connect worldwide about play therapy. So those of you listening on the podcast, go ahead and, send me a message, post comments, connect with me on Instagram. My Instagram channel is at Renewing Hearts Training, or pop over into my Facebook group, which is Play and Expressive Arts Therapy Playground. You have to answer all the questions to get into the group, though, and you have to be a play therapist or a child and adolescent therapist or an aspiring play therapist. So maybe you're in the process. So let's go ahead and get started for today. Oh, before I do that, one other thing I forgot. If you find the information helpful, please feel free to share it across your social media platforms. If you're watching on YouTube, YouTube is probably the easiest place, other than my Facebook group. YouTube is probably the easiest place to find all the replays. If you're on my YouTube channel, which is Cathi Spooner, Renewing Hearts Training, then you're going to want to click on the live tab. All of the replays are on the live tab, and you just like go through. I think I have like 3 years worth of videos in there because I go live every week on YouTube, LinkedIn, and usually here on Instagram, unless I have a guest, because I can't use my streaming platform. And for some reason, Facebook or Meta won't let me use my streaming platform on Facebook anymore in my group. So I post all the replays in there. So if you're in my group and you want to watch live, pop over to my YouTube channel and you can watch live there and join the conversation. So the only thing that I ask, if you're posting comments or questions or sharing your experiences, the only thing that I would ask is not to use specific client information because it is a public format and we want to make sure to maintain privacy. So with that, let's get started with today. And today we are talking about working with traumatized children and teens. And is there a theory model that works best? And if you're using an integrative model, back in the day we called it eclectic, what exactly does that mean? So I'm actually not I'm not a proponent of there's only one way. I just haven't found that to be true. There's only one way to do play therapy and to get good results. I think you need to choose a model that aligns with your beliefs about play therapy, your way of being, fits with your personality, because we do bring our personality into the play therapy therapeutic relationship. Like I decided years and years ago, so this is a few decades ago now, when I originally started in the mental health field, working in community mental health. So that's public mental health. And I've always worked with kids and teens and families because I've always felt like that's my calling. Even as a little girl, I was going to save the world. I was going to save all the kids. And I realized when I decided I was going to go into private practice, I decided I had to do things a little differently. Because if I was going to last in this profession, I had to be authentic and I had to be me with professional boundaries. We always have the professional boundaries because we're not friends, we're not roomies, we're not family, we're not hanging out. It's a professional relationship that has professional boundaries, and we bring all of our therapeutic use of self into the playroom. So I decided I really had to be me. That meant I needed to have fun. I needed to be able to be a little nerdy and goofy. And so, what would that mean? Aligning with a model that I felt comfortable using. And I think that's the important the important part. I also think that using an integrative model does help to individualize play therapy for your specific client. Now, that being said, when I work with like the 8 and unders, definitely the 7 and unders, I'm using more of a strictly child-centered play therapy. I'm not integrating, I'm not directing, I'm not choosing activities, I am following. I am fully present in the moment, connecting, therapeutic use of self, congruence, unconditional positive regard and empathy. And I would say I am more of an integrative play therapist because there's a certain time where I'm going to use more of an integrative model. I'm going to stop using a strictly child-centered play therapy model because that aligns with me. It aligns with my what would I say? My values about therapy and my beliefs, theoretical orientations to play therapy, plus the way I've been trained using play therapy. So I would say at this point, it's more integrative. And so what I found is as I have been working with play therapists, child and adolescent therapists over the last 15 years, is that there are certain ways of being. There are certain ways that feel comfortable and feel aligned with therapists. And when they integrate those, it goes really well. The thing is, it's grounded in a theoretical model. And so let's go ahead and talk about what does that mean to be an integrative play therapist. And it looks like we have a comment from Becky G. Becky said, I just came across this live through YouTube's algorithm. I actually need some advice and ideas to help me with my beautiful 14-year-old daughter. Well, welcome, Becky. You'll learn a little bit about play therapy here. Actually, that's a great question. You know what I would suggest, Becky? In your state, there should be an association for play therapy chapter or a branch. So I would like whatever state that you live in, maybe do a Google search on, like if you live in Kentucky Association for Play Therapy. They should have some play therapists that would probably be able to help you out with that. So that's a great question. All righty. So what is an integrative play therapy model? So an integrative play therapy model is really the blending of two or more theoretical models to meet the unique needs of your specific client. So an integrative model views mental health problems as more multi-layered and complex because humans are multi-layered and complex. And through, like I mentioned previously, like through the decades of the psychotherapy field over the years, it's kind of changed. Originally, like back in my day anyway, when I first got started 35 years ago, that we called it eclectic. Nowadays, we tend to call it more integrative. I kind of like that better because eclectic sounded a little, for me, sounded a little too much like eccentric. And I didn't want to go in that direction with play therapy because it just seemed to go in a direction that wasn't therapeutic. And integrated sounds to me to be more accurate in terms because we are blending, we're integrating models. And so the thing about play therapy and using an integrative model is you're blending theoretical models, and your theory models is going to influence how your client accesses the therapeutic powers of play. The therapeutic powers of play and understanding what those therapeutic powers of play are is what sets play therapy apart from other theoretical models, from other expressive arts models. So expressive arts being art therapy, dance therapy, music therapy, poetry therapy. And in each of those expressive arts modalities, there are different theoretical models as well. So for play therapy, what sets play therapy apart is how children access the therapeutic powers of play. And that is going to be influenced by your theory model. So, for example, how child-centered play therapy helps children to access the therapeutic powers of play is going to look a little different than how like Gestalt play therapy or psychodynamic play therapy or Adlerian play therapy. It's going to look a little bit different. So some integrative models that have been around in the therapy arena for a couple of decades now, I would say probably more than a couple decades, probably more like 3 decades, would be like ecosystemic play therapy or prescriptive play therapy. These are more integrative models. And what makes it integrative is you're blending theory models, and your theory models are still going to influence how you help your child access those therapeutic powers of play. So, for example, when you are, so your theory model is going to influence how you make sense of what the problem is and how you make sense of what's causing the problem or what's sustaining the problem. What are the patterns in your client? What activates, where it gets activated, where it doesn't get activated, the behavior going on that's bringing them in. Are there certain patterns around that? We're also looking at patterns in their environment, like what are the family relationship interaction patterns? What are the interaction patterns between caregiver and child? What are patterns in the child's school? If things are getting activated there, if they're not getting activated there, why are they not getting activated there? So your theory model, you're going to use all of that type of information, and then your theory model is going to influence how you conceptualize that. So if you're interested more in learning about case conceptualization, I've got a ton more videos that could be easily found on my YouTube channel if you want to pop over there, and more discussion about that. For today's discussion, we're thinking about case conceptualization from an integrative play therapy model, which means we're blending theory models, and those blended theory models are going to influence how our clients are going to access the therapeutic powers of play. Because even in an integrative model, those specific models that you're integrating, those theoretical models are going to be the foundation out of which you're using play therapy. So, for example, let's say you are working with trauma and you're using a model that's focused on cognitive model or schema models. And then that's going to result in you conceptualizing what's going on with your client. So how is that trauma impacting, how is that traumatic experience impacting your client? And then how you conceptualize that is then going to influence the activities you do and what it is you do in sessions. Versus, let's say you're using more of an EMDR and you're blending in some EMDR. EMDR is going to conceptualize the impact of trauma a certain way, and then that's going to influence what exactly you do in the sessions and how you do it. And let's say you're blending maybe some cognitive models and maybe somatic experiencing, or maybe you're also blending in a little internal family systems or IFS. When you're blending all those together, you're blending those theory models, and then that's going to influence how you make sense of what's going on and with your client, how is that traumatic experience impacting your specific client, and then what are you going to do in the sessions? So I love using neuroscience and attachment and neuroscience and attachment theory to explain and better understand the impact of trauma. So when I look at it that way, I'm going to conceptualize from using a neuroscience and attachment lens. So maybe I'm thinking about interpersonal neurobiology. Maybe I'm looking at some of the work of Peter Fonagy and his colleagues about mentalization. And maybe I'm also thinking about IFS and how that might be influencing what's going on, what it is my client is struggling with. And then what I'm going to do, so because I look at IFS, I know it's not specifically like a neuroscience and attachment model, but the way that I kind of look at IFS is through that concept of integration, like interpersonal neurobiology. Daniel Siegel will talk about the flow of energy and information, and we think about how memory works and the impact of trauma on memory and implicit memory. Then we're also maybe blending in a little somatic experiencing here as well. But when I'm thinking about IFS, then I'm thinking about like the flow of energy and information and how memory got stored, and then these kind of split off aspects of self and our efforts internally and even implicitly, those implicit experiences, how are we managing that? So I'm also thinking about window of distress tolerance and what happens when I go outside my window of distress tolerance and what that looks like if I've been impacted by trauma. So what does that look like? How do clients manage that? What are the patterns that I notice? So in this way, these would be some integrative theory models of blending together and conceptualizing what that specific experience was like for each of my specific clients, and then how to help them overcome that negative impact and learn how to heal and thrive and accomplish, what we would call post-traumatic growth. So I'm looking at all of these components of these theoretical models, and I'm blending, and then how I'm blending together becomes the way in which I conceptualize what is going on with my client and what strategies I'm going to use to help them heal. And so the other thing is your integrative model. Most, I would say, outside of child-centered play therapy, which is the therapist is always following. There's no questions. We're not asking questions. We're not like asking questions to get them go a certain way. Outside of child-centered play therapy, most play therapy models will kind of have a combination of sometimes the therapist leads, sometimes the child leads. So if you're, depending on what theory model you're blending in there, is also going to influence your way of being in the session in terms of, are you leading or are you following your client? As a play therapist, when are you leading and when are you following? And how are you making that decision? Well, part of that is going to be influenced by your theoretical model and how your theory model understands what's going on. And part of that's also how you're conceptualizing the issues for your clients and how you are conceptualizing how you show up in the session. And so Those are all things that you want to think about when you are using an integrative model. And so some important considerations to think about would be when you're using a theoretical model, your model is still based on the application of those theory models that you're using, because theory drives application, right? How my theory understands it is also how my theory model explains what I'm going to do in the session. So it's important to consider like how those specific theory models define what the problem is, and how your theory, like those models how those theory models will then influence what you're going to do in the session. And that's your clinical decision making process. You're thinking all of this is your clinical to think. My mouth isn't working today. All of these are going to influence your clinical decision-making process. So case conceptualization is an ongoing assessment throughout the treatment process. You'll do your initial case conceptualization, and then you'll gather information through the play therapy process. Excuse me, I got a little tickle in my throat now. Get a drink of water. I hate when that happens. All right, hold on a minute. Let me get some more water. There we go. Okay, so where was I? Your case conceptualization is an ongoing assessment process, right? Throughout each phase, you're assessing where your client is, looking at that in terms of what your theory model and how your theory models, even an integrated approach to play therapy, how is that lining up with where are they in the change process? And then your clinical decision making is you're taking that information and figuring out, how am I applying this for each specific client? Each of my clients is unique and different. What is this going to look like with each of my different kind of unique clients? And how am I going to show up? Like, what's going to my way of being to create that safe space for this client? And how do I know when I need to speed up or slow down to the pacing of what we're doing? So you're still basing all of that on the theoretical models that you're blending. Because what can happen is, if you're not considering that case conceptualization based on your theory models and how you're helping your clients access the therapeutic powers of play, then what often happens, and I see this a lot, is play therapists start thinking, oh my gosh, this isn't working. And then they go through all of their resources, they consult online, finding different activities, they go through their books, they ask their friends, like, what kind of activities can I use? And then they'll kind of start indiscriminately just pulling out activities and kind of over focusing on getting the right activity. I have to get this perfect activity. If I do this activity, then everything will be better. And so and then they just kind of start what I call throwing spaghetti against the wall and hoping something sticks. And then you end up feeling exhausted, worrying that it's never going to work, thinking maybe I'm a terrible therapist, maybe I just suck at this, it's not very good. You start second guessing yourself, doubting your abilities, or maybe you just get tired and you're just kind of fried a little bit because you've spent so much time trying to figure out the right activity that's going to unlock everything. The reality is, it doesn't work that way. Therapy is a process. There's as much an art to therapy as there is to skill and knowledge. It's that blending of your therapeutic use of self, your presence, and how your presence therapeutic presence, creating safety, empathy, therapeutic rapport, so that when there's a little bit of challenge in the process, and there will be challenge, then your client can safely navigate that through with you. And your model, or the blending of your models, is going to be like your guidebook of how to get through that process and what it is that you're doing in sessions. So when you feel a little lost, like, oh, is this working? I don't know if I'm doing it right. My gosh, my client has been doing this for the last 5 sessions. Seems like the same thing over and over. Am I missing something? Is it working? Are they ready to be finished? Are they ready for termination? And when you find yourself thinking those things because they've been doing the same thing over and over, or you're not sure what's going on, or you feel lost and kind of deflated, then what you want to do is take a step back and go back to your theory models, which is also true when you're using an integrative approach, because you are blending theory models. So, for example, maybe you're using an approach where you are sometimes using TheraPlay, or sometimes you're using child-centered play therapy, or maybe sometimes you're using Adlerian play therapy, but you want to switch over to TheraPlay. That's part of your case conceptualization of what's going on with your client, what are sustaining the problems, what are the patterns, and how are you going to address those things? So your theory model is going to influence how you do that. So when you're blending them together, and maybe you're switching from child-centered play therapy and you don't want to do filial or child-parent relationship therapy, maybe you want to use TheraPlay because you want to really work on that attachment relationship and you like TheraPlay. Maybe you like TheraPlay better than you like filial or child relationship. Filial and child parent relationship therapy are both kind of come out of that child-centered play therapy model where you integrate parents into the sessions. But you're still looking at the theory model and how that looks in the sessions, even when you're using an integrated play therapy approach. And I would say that includes when you're working with children who experience trauma. So that is that is it for today. Let me go ahead. And there's 2 things. One, I'm going to go ahead and give you a recap. The other thing is, maybe you're struggling and you're thinking, I have clients on my caseload who've experienced trauma, and I'm not sure if I'm doing it the right way, if I'm helping them, or maybe you've been doing play therapy for a while and you're just feeling a little stale and stagnant. You could use a little time of getting refreshed and collaborating with some of your play therapy community people. I have a training that's coming up. You can either attend live, in person. You can attend in person in St. George, Utah, or you can attend virtually. There's 2 options, attending virtually or in person. So if you're been looking for maybe some strategies to use because you have clients on your caseload who've experienced trauma, then I'm going to talk a little bit about that at the end. So you'll want to stay tuned for that. Just to recap for today, though, first thing is, today we are talking about how to use an integrative play therapy model with traumatized children and teens. And the first thing when you're thinking about using an integrative model is be really clear on what exactly does that mean? What does it mean to use an integrative play therapy model? And so integrative play therapy is when you're blending 2 or more theoretical models for the purpose of tailoring your play therapy or your treatment approach to meet the specific needs of each of your clients and their experience of trauma. So you're integrating theoretical models, and that's the key there, thinking about what theories are you blending together, because that is going to influence how you're conceptualizing what's going on with your clients and how you're conceptualizing the impact of the trauma and then what is going to help them get better. So what strategies and activities and your way of being, what is all that going to look like to help your specific client? And the other thing with that is it's all your theory models are also going to influence how your clients are going to access those therapeutic powers of play. So the way Adlerian play therapy would help clients access those therapeutic powers of play is going to look different than child-centered play therapy. An integrative model of play therapy is going to blend theoretical models, and then the specific models that you're blending are going to influence how your clients are going to access those therapeutic powers of play. Typically, when you're blending models together, you are doing some non-directive and some directive activities. And then the third thing is to keep in mind is your theory models are going to influence how you understand the problem and what you're going to do in the sessions, because you want to avoid using more of that haphazard, indiscriminate, just pulling play therapy activities, trying to find the right ones, and just you over focus on the activities and not kind of balance that out with how it's fitting in with the theory models that you're blending. What is that going to look like? Because what ends up happening is what I call throwing the throwing spaghetti against the wall method and hoping something sticks. And it's not an effective approach. And we've all done it, right? Like I've done it in the past where I over focus on the activities, and then what ends up happening, I end up like, so I'm so focused on the activities that I'm like, oh my gosh, where are we in the treatment process? Or wait a minute, is this working? What's happening? What stage are we in? Let me take a step back. And then I reground myself in the theory models that I'm using, and it helps me figure out what stage of treatment I'm in. And then, okay, yeah, this is what we're supposed to be doing in this stage of treatment. So your theory model is really what keeps you grounded and provides that framework throughout the play therapy process. So I think the key thing to keep in mind for integrative play therapy is don't over focus on just finding activities. You want to make sure you balance that out with what specific models are you blending together? How are you using those with your clients? How is that influencing your understanding of the problem? What stage of play therapy they're in for the healing process? All righty. So LinkedIn user said, this is very helpful. Thank you. Awesome. Thank you, LinkedIn user, for participating today. That's awesome. Thank you for the feedback. So let me tell you about a training that I have coming up that's going to use an integrative approach. So a lot of times when I'm working with children and adolescents, to be honest, even adults who have experienced trauma, I'm typically shifting over to using more of an integrative model. Once that definitely, but by the time they're 8, definitely by 9, it is rare that I stick strictly to child-centered play therapy. So when I'm using more of an integrative model, to me, what I've learned over the last 35 years is having that model helps to ground the work that I'm doing. And so when I created this training, which kind of came out of experience working with traumatized children, adolescents, and families, as well as through my supervision, doing consultation and trainings with people, kind of seeing where people are struggling. And so in this training, I use a neuroscience and attachment lens, blending together some of those theoretical models that we use with neuroscience and attachment theory. And how does trauma impact children and adolescents using that theoretical lens? Because that's our case conceptualization. And then from there, we look at kind of how play therapy shows up in sessions, like what might be some of those play themes and play behaviors, what might some of that meaning be, because then you want to plug that into your model, give you some more information to help you with your clinical decision making. And then we're gonna break down a model and the different stages of play therapy using this integrative model that's rooted in neuroscience and attachment theory to help your clients access those therapeutic powers of play for healing. And what is that going to look like in each stage? What are you going to be doing in each stage? We're going to do some activities, some experiential activities, so you get ideas of what strategies you can use in that session. That's part of your clinical decision making as well. And then also some tips on integrating parents and how to integrate parents into the play therapy process, because that's also an area where I find people struggle. So it's a one-day training. It's super packed full of things. By the end of the training, you're going to leave with definitely some ideas, feeling rejuvenated because you will have interacted with your play therapy peeps and gotten some ideas, feeling rejuvenated, feeling refreshed. This is hard work that we do. And I'm a firm believer that doing it within the context of community can make all of the difference. And because I believe so strongly in community and using each other for support, when you register for this training, you also get access to my play therapy membership that is now currently called Play Therapy Elevation Circle. That's my membership. You can only get access right now by if you register for the training. The membership is closed, except you can get access by attending the training. You'll get 2 free months. So because what I thought about it is when you do the trainings and then you leave, it's kind of like, well, it would be nice to continue having support, having a place to share ideas and share some wins, but also share where you may be struggling. And so that's why I thought that would be beneficial and keep providing support would be to allow if you register for the trauma training, which is called Healing Trauma Through Play Therapy and Neuroscience and Attachment Approach. So the training is called Healing Trauma Through Play Therapy, a Neuroscience and Attachment Approach. And when you register, you also get you'll get access to my play therapy membership called Play Therapy Elevation Circle. So registration is ending soon. Right now, there is an early bird pricing that ends April 30th. So it's going to end next week. So if you want to take advantage of the reduced price, as well as the being able to have access to the membership, then you're going to want to register before April 30th. If you register after April 30th, you won't get the early bird pricing, but you'll still get access to the membership. So registration, the training is on May 17th. Registration closes May 15th. So you'll want to register soon. You can pop over to my website, which is rhplaytherapytraining.com. Hop over to the courses page for healing trauma through play therapy, a neuroscience and attachment approach. The website again is rhplaytherapytraining.com. That's renewingheartsplaytherapytraining.com, and pop over to that courses page. If you have any questions, feel free to message me. I'm happy to answer any questions about the training, or maybe you need the link. Feel free to message me. I can send you the link, or check the comments. You can check the comments. If you're watching on Instagram, you can look in the comments or pop over to my bio. And I will see you guys next week. Bye for now. Thank you for joining me on this episode of Next Level Play Therapy. I hope you found the discussion valuable and gained new insights and ideas to support your work helping children, adolescents, and families heal. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe to the podcast and leave a review. Your feedback helps to improve and reach more people who can benefit from this information. Remember, play therapy is a powerful tool for healing and growth. Whether you're a new play therapist or experienced, I encourage you to continue your learning journey to unlock the potential of play in your own work and relationships. If you have any questions or topic suggestions for future episodes, I'd love to hear from you. Connect with me on social media and visit my website at Renewing Hearts Play Therapy Training to stay updated on upcoming episodes, trainings, and resources. Thank you once again for listening to Next Level Play Therapy. Until next time, keep playing, learning, and growing.